All right, it's right at 2 o'clock, and just while people file into the room, we're going to kill some dead air with some questions that have no relevancy or importance to what we're talking about today. We're not even going to talk about what we're talking about today. These questions are so silly. So we're covering coast to coast here. I'm in the Atlanta area. Penny is in San Diego. Kim, I'm assuming you're in Wyoming. Is that correct?
I am. I'm in Wyoming today.
So we're only missing the central time zone. Is that right? All right, Eastern. Yeah, we're just missing the central time zone. I'm only about an hour and a half from there, so we'll claim that I'm in central time zone too. So how about that? So the silly, unimportant question that has no relevance to today's meeting, to today's webinar for Penny is, what is your favorite food?
Chips and salsa.
Chips and salsa. All right, there we go. Kim, I'm not going to make yours so easy. What is your favorite city to visit?
Oh, Sedona, Arizona, which I live in part of the year. Yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. If you live there, is that really visiting?
Well, but it's still my favorite city.
Okay.
You know, the hiking is great.
All right, we'll give you that. Yeah, I think my favorite city in the U.S. favorite city is is Monterey. That's just I would go there every day if I could.
It's
beautiful. And so, all right, one more question, and I was going to ask Penny this before we started, but are you and Damien still doing your podcast?
Yep.
Yep. And what's it called?
Oh, Strategy for the Virtual Controller.
Perfect. All right. So if you're taking notes, Strategy for the Virtual Controller. Go check it out. I've listened to it a few times, but not lately. I've just not been listening to podcasts lately. So I just wasn't sure. Well,
I don't listen to them at all.
Yeah, it's hard, right? Because I mean, we have one too, and it's really hard to listen to yourself. So you're like, oh gosh, that sounds ridiculous. That's the dumbest question I've ever asked in my life.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, all right, well, let me get this thing started. My name is Gary Dehart, and I'm the publisher of Insightful Accountant and the host of Accounting Insiders podcast and host of the Future Forward Summit. So thank you all for joining us for the Future Forward Summit. The session is QuickBooks Online integrations, how to get it right the first time, which I think is pretty important. And our speakers today are Kim Fedore and Penny Breslin. I will have them introduce themselves after I cover the housekeeping items. So this session does qualify for CPE. Just like every CPE session you've ever sat in on, you have to be here for 50 minutes. You must answer 3 of the polling questions. We have more than that, but you have to answer at least 3. If you meet those 2 requirements, we will send you an email with a link to a very short survey, 3-question survey. Complete that survey and we will send you or email you your certificate. The recording will be posted on our YouTube page, which I will put that link in the chat once I turn the session over. And we'll also send you that link in the follow-up email, which you will receive again in about 24 hours. We'll drop the slide deck into the chat as well, but a link to the slide deck will also be included in that email that you will receive tomorrow. If you have questions that come up during this session, which I'm sure you will, place them in the Q&A panel. And be sure to make a specific reference to the topic, because we're going to hold the questions till the end, just so that Kim and Penny can get through their materials. So be real specific in your question. Hey, Penny mentioned X. Here's my question about that, because 35, 40 minutes from now, we're going to have no idea what your question's about if you don't give us that detail. So before I turn it over, this session is brought to you by Landy Insurance. Landy's Accountants Professional Liability Insurance Program covers accountants, bookkeepers, enrolled agents, and tax preparers for services provided in their accounting practices. Their broad definition of professional services actually includes some others, includes accounting, financial planning, consulting, notary public, fiduciary, investment advisor, and arbitrator mediator. So Landy has you covered. I'm going to go ahead and post a poll question before I do turn it over, and it's just, would you like to hear from Landy? We can't do these sessions without our sponsors. So, and you need E&O insurance. If you don't have it, definitely give them a call. If you have it, it never hurts to get another quote. So we'll leave that open for about a minute or so, and then we will just get this turned over to Kim and to Penny. And did I pronounce both your names correctly, right? The last names, not your first names.
Fedore. A lot of people
Fedore.
say Fedore, but it's Fedore.
All right.
I think you got it right.
Close enough, right?
Exactly.
Well, good. I don't like to offend anybody with mispronounced names. So it's funny. My mother-in-law refuses to say my last name the way that we say it. She's like, it's not supposed to be said that way. I'm going to say it my way. So what can you do? So, all right, we're going to leave this open for about 5 more seconds. So if you need CPE, go ahead and get this one in early. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay. Kim, Penny, it is all yours. Thank you. I'm going to go dark.
Gary, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Well, we so appreciate everyone joining us today. And I'd like to give you a little background on why I'm here, how we ended up here, and what we're going to cover today before we do turn it over to Penny. And many of you are familiar with QBExpress as a QuickBooks training company. What you may not be aware of is the last 4 to 5 years, we have been developing major QuickBooks Online curriculum for Intuit education. And they use our curriculums in all the high schools, junior colleges, et cetera, nationwide. They provide free curriculum to the universities and a free copy of QBO for the pro version for 12 months. But anyway, we have crafted all these training materials from a 1-hour class clear up to full semester classes on absolutely everything that you can do in QBO. And our materials now with a different Intuit division, they're used nationally by the American Small Business Development Center, American Women's Business Center, Operation Hope, just all over the place. The state of Michigan hired us to create specific training for them. The reason for me bringing this all up, if you could move on to the next slide, Penny, is this. As we have developed all of this training, we have become vitally aware that something is missing. And that is an actual complete training module on app integration, which we all know is a completely critical part of using QBO successfully. So we reached out to Insightful Accountant. They've been great working with us on the project. Amy Keenan's helping us. We are bound and determined to really not only map out these tech stacks, but what we are doing is we have created one huge data set, in other words, one company in QBO, and we're getting our core tech stack, the 4 partners, the 4 main categories, and we're actually walking through with everybody on the phone. PBS is recording it for us, actually walking through an actual integration in the order where it makes most sense to do that. We're going to record, we're going to take notes on any sync errors. Okay, we came to this sync error, what could we have done to avoid this? And I laugh with this one. Have you ever encountered a sync error? Of course you have, we all have, it's ridiculous. And so we're trying to engineer a lot of time out of the sync process for accountants. Now, QBExpress is a large co-op of accounting firms that all work together, and they use our training materials for their clients and in all kinds of environments. But like I say, we were really missing a tech training module. So we know we're going to encounter a lot of issues, and we're going to try to engineer all of that out of the process for you. For example, after you load this, you'll probably run into this sync error. Here's what to turn off in this app before you load it. In other words, we're really going to dial in that specific. That training is going to be available to you. It's going to be offered by Insightful Accountant with CPE, and we will condense everything that we do in that next class. So we just wanted to mention where this is going. So today, what could we accomplish in this time frame? We could accomplish providing a very basic understanding of best practices in QBO, a guideline of how to map the apps. And Penny and I actually bought that URL, I don't know how many years ago, 10 years ago, we were planning to do something and just didn't get it done. And here it's happening now, Penny. And also to provide a sample core tech stack and standard order in SOP, excuse me, standard operations. So we really want you to leave with those kinds of checklisted items. Now, why I asked Penny to do this with me, if you want to move on here, Penny, is simply this. For those of you that do not know Penny, she has a large outsourced bookkeeping company, so she faces the challenges of working with these apps every day. But far more important than that, Penny is a tech consultant for not only our network, for accountants across the country, and she maps the apps for accountants and their clients. But she also has a service where these technology companies hire her firm to test their app on all kinds of integrations. So Penny has both perspectives, the accountant using it in their office every day and the tech company. So Penny, I'm going to turn my camera off as well. Thank you for doing this. We hashed out this.
Don't turn your camera off. You need to
Right.
remind me when I need to move. Okay, stay on. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Gary, for inviting me. This was kind of an overview. We don't know what your level of understanding about apps, bots, API. The three words that you're going to hear. They're not words, they're really like acronyms. So what is an API? And an API, I'm just going to, there's lots of notes here. You're going to get the slide deck. So I'm not going to read in detail all my notes, but API is simply, it's the language between the two apps. An app develops an API and each API has to talk to one another. Here in San Diego, we have something called interstates. I'm sure you have them in your states. Call them different things like I-5 here, the 95 where I grew up in Boston, I-25 where I lived in Colorado, so in Wyoming. So everybody has their own name, but in San Diego, we have lagoons. And those lagoons block you from going from one side of town to the other side of town. So they have what's called a connector. And so we have several connectors that connect us between the I-5 that goes up the coast and I-15 that goes up the inland empire. And we could not cross that without maybe some kayaks and surfboards and SUPs without having those connectors. So that's what the API does. API gets the connection going to the app that you're integrating to or from. It allows the different apps to communicate. It improves, hopefully, the financial reporting analysis. That's kind of the goal. And then it streamlines the operations so that you're not doing so much of where is it and what is it, and also keying that in. So what's the difference between an app and a bot? We know what the API is. That's the thing that's tunneling between the two. The app is the actual app. QBO is an app. It's an application. Some of these others that integrate to it, they're their own apps. They are applications. They just happen to be in the cloud, so we shorten it to app rather than a desktop application. Desktop applications can integrate. However, it takes a little bit extra work to do those. It might take Zapier or something along those lines. A bot, the bot is the robot. The bot is the thing that actually makes the transaction happen, or makes the report happen, or makes the journal entry happen. That's the bot. And what do? We direct the bots. If you're as old as me, you remember Lost in Space and that robot, that what I would look at and go, how the hell did that robot get up that rock with those tractors? Because somebody picked that robot up and directed it. We still need to direct the bots. So let's break down a common core stack. I call this my little black dress, and Kim asked me to bring this back. I almost forgot I wrote about this. But basically, and you could do suit for men. Damien and I argue about what a man would call it. But every woman has in her wardrobe a black dress. And that black dress could take her to a day at the races, to an evening cocktail party, an even afternoon wedding, depending on how she accessorizes it. So we have a stack that is basic. Almost every one of your clients are going to need one of these, if not all of these items in their stack. So we start with that and we build on that stack. That's my basic. And that's what I want to have consistent across my client database, regardless of the client. So what are these stacks? We have banking and credit cards right up, they're right there. They're automatically connected. Well, not automatically. They should be connected to the QBO feed. And I think there's a polling question about that. Accounts receivable, some businesses are cash businesses. And so there would be a payment processing agent, perhaps, or a e-commerce cart instead of accounts receivable there. Accounts payable, RX and expense tracking, those two are interchangeable. And then payroll. If it's QBO payroll, then it's built in, you can get it built in. If it's non, then there's a different way of connecting that app to bring it in. Some of these are combination, so you can look. We'll go into a little bit more detail here. So with banking and credit cards are the number one first thing you should connect in QBO. It's going to make your life easier. I know some people are, they're apprehensive about it because they do break. Everything breaks. People can change their passwords. The system breaks. The bank changes how they do things. They didn't call up Intuit and go, hey, we changed how we designed our website. So Intuit's got to constantly be working on that. And they're pretty good at it, actually. So once you get that banking app connected, then the other integrations come along and you design how you want to do it. You design that based on how your workflow works in your firm and how you're choosing to work with your clients. But without the banking app, all the other stuff just becomes more difficult. So start with the banking app. So in a standard order of procedure, we want to first find out what your client needs are. Now, we've got our basic black dress of apps, right? And you could say out of those basic ones, this particular client needs everything but payroll because we're all going to use QuickBooks payroll for them. Okay, fine. So we've got to connect their bank. We've got to use our AP app, and we've got to use our expense tracker for them, whatever it is. So we review that need with the client. And there are questions you can ask the client. Heck, your accountants, you're going to know what they need when you ask these questions. If you need a list of questions, we can give those to you. Then you run the financials that are currently, if the file already exists, run the financials and find out the thing that your client didn't know that they should have told you, because that's why they hired you, is because they really don't know what they're doing with QuickBooks. And then you will find sometimes another app that you're aware of that could help with some of those issues. Or you will find that perhaps they don't need a particular app, or you will find that they actually would benefit, and you could quickly look at the ROI, the benefit of that app. And then you need to review the setup of that app and how it integrates into QuickBooks Online. People get concerned about connecting apps. The easiest part is to connect the app. The tough part is deciding what you want that app to do and what the end result is going to be. So we review the mapping of the apps. So one of the things that is first is common is payroll. If they need to, when they're bringing in a third-party payroll, they need to make sure that the chart of accounts in QuickBooks matches the information that is coming from QBO, from the payroll company. So a long, long time ago, a gentleman by the name of Hal Rosen, who's a CPA, I believe he's still practicing, once said to me, when I asked him, why do accountants use sub-accounts? He goes, realistically, the only one I use is the one for payroll. And I said, why? And he goes, because I want to break out the state, the benefits, and all of that. Well, you're going to have to make sure that the client's chart of accounts has those mapped accounts so that the the payroll account can map to it to create the correct journal entry to disperse that amongst the different sub-accounts that Hal Rosen likes to put into his QBO. And if Hal Rosen's out there, shout outs to you. I've been using that line forever. Thank you, dude. And once you do that, you need to adjust the QBO to match what it is you're going to pull out of that app. That app on this side is showing you, this is what we provide to QBO. This is what we're going to give you. But you've got to make sure there is a corresponding place to put that item once it gets there. Otherwise, it looks like the house that the hoarders built. The next part is the part that I really like lately in the last couple of years when Rewind came out. That may be about 5 years now. Backup and restore. Didn't you love it when Windows came out with that little restore where you could put the date you restore your computer? You can bring it back to where it was without going back to a reformat. This is like having desktop restore. This is a restore, and I'm not promoting them, but we'll talk a little bit more about it later. So what I do is I rewind the QBO file and then I run a test. And I verify that what I mapped and what I expected occurred. Then I make a decision that, was this a valid integration? Was this going to do good? We've already thought it was going to do good. Now I'm going to see the results of that. If it works, then we're going to go forward. If we don't get what we want, we go back, we relook at our sync. We look at maybe where we messed up on our mapping, or we relook and go, hey, maybe we didn't really need this information, or we need the information, but it's not from this app. And we can pull it back and restore the file to the way it was when we started. Completely restored. Phase 4 is where the robots are out of it. The apps are out of it. This is where you do your magic, because you've got to train your client. I see a lot of people going out and getting apps, and they sit there unused because the client never bought into it. So you need to be able to train your client on how to use it so they use it properly, and to make sure that you're getting the benefit of the reports that you need, which was the reason why you implemented the app. And you also have to train the client on where they go if they have a problem. Now, in my world, robots aren't perfect. As much as I would like them to be, they're not. We live at the point of integration in my office, and we see where they fail. We see where if I didn't pay attention to the review part while I let the robot do the data entry, I better be able to review their work. If I don't review the work, the robot will do what it's going to do. It's just going to go in a straight line. If I had a drone and I was going up and down the coast on that drone, if I wasn't directing it, it would just go all the way to Mexico until it ran out of energy or Wi-Fi reception, because there's got to be somebody directing the bot, because a carrot is always not a carrot. In this world of debits and credits, it can be a julienne carrot, it can be a small carrot, it can be a large carrot, it can be a bag of carrots, it can be organic carrots. However that carrot looks, the bot doesn't know. You're given the context. So this is where you live. Why I believe in Rewind. CYA, period. You can do do-overs over and over again. You can practice. You can build a demo file. And you could do this for every client individually, but you'd have to rebuild that demo file, clear out old data, like in the old days when we used to do QuickBooks training. I would create files and I do a presentation and I have to clear out the old data. And then I developed tricks to keep myself from having to do that. But this takes care of it. So I can either spend the time doing a rebuild to test my data on my demo file and pay for the demo file, or I could pay Rewind and just have it all done. Your choice. Okay, so somebody asked me, Penny, what's the difference between the dotted lines and the solid lines? These are the main things that are going on based on that little black dress of apps. We got money going in and out. We got the bank, we got payroll, and we got reporting. Money going in and out of the bank actually can go both ways depending on the bank you're using. Some banks have an integrated AP app, so information goes back and forth, but it definitely does come into QuickBooks, right? Money on the apps go in and out because some apps have AR, some apps they sync the attached document into QBO, or they bring back the transaction to offset the AP in QBO, saving you the time. Payroll is a one-way sync from the payroll company to QBO. So you can see the arrow's solid, it's going into QBO. And reporting apps, and it's amazing because I hear this question all the time when I'm talking to people about KPI reporting apps. Well, if I make a change in the report, will it affect QuickBooks? No, it only goes into the reporting app and it leaves QuickBooks alone. Much the same as when you export to Excel and you mess around in Excel. It's not making any changes into QuickBooks, neither do any of these KPIs. So it's solid going out. So here's a summary of what we just went over and the lines. Thank you. Christine, I believe, designed this. So she did an excellent job. This is the summary. But here's the thing is, and this is where I think a lot of people really do understand this, and I think they use it. The problem is they don't understand this is a reoccurring daily event. Depending on the amount of transactions coming through your client's file, sometimes in many cases, we have to be in this app daily to make sure that it's connected and that it's doing its job properly. I don't have to go in there and do a lot of data entry. It only takes me 5 minutes to go into a QBO file, review all the integrations to it and go, oh, everything's going fine. Great. Feeds going, feeds going, feeds going, feeds going. Now I'll do my weekly, whatever I have to do, or my monthly or my quarterly, but I do need to check to make sure that that's done. I see a lot of files where nobody bothered to check the integration and you've got a whole mess to clean up afterwards. So let's move on to best practices. So the best practices first research and evaluate, plan and test, training and implementation, monitor and maintain. This is just like what a software company would do because you're basically technical at this point, right? So when we research the apps, there is an Intuit marketplace where you can go for their recommended apps. Look at reviews. I always read the reviews. I also ask my fellow members of this community, what do you think? What have you seen? What do you do? Does it do a cost evaluation? We did a time and motion study years ago when I was working in a large outsourcing company, and because we had to time how long it would take to do a tax return for one person on a given shift, how many returns they could get done. So we did time and motion studies. So we actually, back in those days before QBO, we did a time and motion study on what it would take to put an AP into QuickBooks Desktop. It was 2.5 minutes. Manual entry of handling the whole full cycle of an AP in Desktop is 2.5 minutes. So if you're going to integrate an AP app, it better be less than 2.5 minutes, right? Cost evaluation on time. Schedule demos. The demos are great when they have them online, but I always want somebody one-on-one to do a demo with me. And they have plenty of people, the good apps do. This is not something you have to do. Get somebody who's a tech savvy person who likes this stuff. I would love doing this stuff before. I really did. I mean, like I just would sit there hours and play with this stuff. Can't do that anymore. My company's different. I have to do different things. And I found somebody who was phenomenal, who loves this stuff, Jones is on it, gets in there, gets down in the nitty gritty, tells me right from the get-go, this will work, this won't, you won't like this, you will like that. She's brilliant, love her. And to tell you the truth, folks, she's not an accountant. She's not a bookkeeper. She's just an extremely educated woman who loves what she's doing. Plan and test, mapping the apps, determine how you're going to move data from each application. Just because The app says it will take every single transaction and put it into QuickBooks. Do you need that? Do you need all that stuff in QuickBooks? What are your ultimate results that you want to get? Can you do it with, does the app also have the option to batch this up and do it as a journal entry? Will that suffice in the reports that you want to get out of QuickBooks? You need to judge that. Some clients want that, but it's going to cause extra work on your side. So you have to evaluate what it is that you want to go into QuickBooks based on what it is you want to get out for the reports. So load, rewind, test the data sync. Again, training.
Penny, can we drop a poll question in here real quick?
Oh, yes, thank you. Yeah.
No worries. All right, here we go. We're going to ask, well, do you currently keep the bank and credit card feeds active in your client's QBO apps?
Can I get a feedback on that when you get done, a percentage?
Yeah, I'll share the results. Yep.
Okay, cool.
All right, we're getting close. Let's give it 5-7 more seconds here, and then because Penny's on a roll, we don't want to stop her too long.
Sorry.
All right, no worries. No, here we go. We're going to wrap this up. 3, 2, and 1, and here's the results.
Good. I like that. That's nice. Very good.
Great. Here we go. All right, back to you.
Brilliant. Okay, so a lot of you are already doing this part. So one of the things that I recommend is you schedule training with the client, show them how it's going to work, whether it's on their mobile app or if it's on the browser. And then show them the end results and how it's going to benefit them. And you want to supply them with training material because they might have a change in personnel. And so you want to be able to make it easy. And there are 2 products. And I know we're not supposed to talk about products, but these are products outside of the accounting industry. And we use them for training. And I highly recommend using Loom videos and keeping them to 5 minutes or less. And that forces you to keep it to 5 minutes or less. And then Scribe How. And that will just allow me to click through some steps, capture the screenshot, give the client the URL. I added it with a little bit of a verbiage of my own words and export to PDF, give it to the client, a written document. It took me like seconds to make. Scribe How. I love that stuff. And then schedule a training session to review this after your clients used it a few times. You got to find out, did they like it? What was their experience? Because if the client isn't happy with it and the client's other employees aren't utilizing it, get rid of it. Find something different that'll work for them. Because if they don't like it, they're just not going to use it, and somebody's going to end up paying for it, and you just need to get rid of it. There was an old law in the Roman books. Okay, I'm a historian, but there's an old law in the books of Rome that once a law was outdated, they needed to remove it. So they regularly went through their laws to remove outdated laws because they cluttered up everything. Okay, next slide. Monitor and maintain. That comes from setting a schedule in your workflow. We actually had somebody complain about that we were, when we gave them the timesheets, they said, you go into every app and check to make sure it's working. Why do you waste time doing that? Just get the work done. And going, well, okay, let's see how that works for you. It didn't work really well when we stopped doing it for them. But we go in and we check every connection and we notify the client, hey, this connection's broken, or this client's not using this app that you told us they would be using. Do you want to continue to use the app? I think this is where Kim is going to take over, and then I'll come back.
I'm just going to jump in real quick here while Penny can grab a drink or something. And the reason I wanted to address this slide, we've already talked about client training pretty extensively, is that at QBExpress, we've done massive surveys of all the accountants giving classes nationwide to the business owners. And frankly, their biggest complaint about their own accountants is they'll set me up, but then they don't train properly. So the written process and procedure that's actually left with the client, even though it sounds old school, I like what Penny's saying about the videos as well, is really critical. And a lot of us are dropping the ball in that regard. And so to walk them through it, how it works and record it at the same time is just really, really important. What we're doing in this next class that we've already talked about, you'll all be invited, CPE, etc., is in the last slide when we talked about checks and balances and the categories that need to come in, we're actually going to outline all of that in specific tech stack integrations, which will save you time. Obviously, you'll need to verify, but it will be a great set of checklists to save you a lot of time going forward. So I just wanted to, Penny, just really emphasize that this is what clients want. It deepens the client engagement. Education is where it's at right now for us creating value for our clients. And, you know, we talked a lot, Penny, about the fact that in all of our surveys, the number one reason that business owners have dropped consulting services is the accountant will go over their financials every month, and after 3 or 4 months, they know exactly what they're going to tell them, and they don't feel like they need them anymore. What they really want is guidance, and client training, client education is exactly how to provide them what they want. Okay, get right back after it.
Okay, thanks, Kim. Thanks for the water break. Okay, security. Let's talk about challenges and considerations. Security and privacy, compatibility and customization, technical expertise and support, and cost on ROI. So on security and privacy, you need to make, a lot of apps have different levels, permission levels. We actually have worked with a lot of app developers in actually developing apps that integrate. And it'd be like, okay, where's the permission levels on this? Who's going to see what? Who has the ability to manipulate the app? Who has the ability to change the account settings and do the mapping? And who has the ability to do this wherever they want? So security, where is your team logging in from? Have you established secure connectivity? If you're going to be connecting to all these different apps, especially banks and credit cards and stuff, are you allowing your team to download this onto their phone that they own? Do you allow them to go into Starbucks or they're at a hotel and they just log into the website? Have you trained your clients on the fact that maybe they should be using their own hotspot if they're going to be logging in to the end and accessing these apps? Because some of this stuff, well, you deal with financial data. You tell me. Some of this stuff has pretty critical data on it. So you want to make sure who's got permission to do what. Who has permission to alter the chart of accounts to match what's going to be fed into it. All of that stuff needs to be detailed out. When I interview app developers, and because they come to us and they think I'm a real bookkeeping company, I don't know why, but they'll come and they'll try to sell the app to me. And the first question is I'll ask them is, what's your burn rate? And how long have you been in business? And where is your data housed? Now, most of the time it's going to be AWS, right? In the United States. Even if they're an overseas company, they're going to have AWS. And that's a good indication that they at least have put up the money for an Amazon server. That's cool. But I want to know what their burn rate is. I want to know how long they're going to be in the community, how long they're going to be around. We have a third-party system company that comes in and audits us from a security standpoint, and also audits all of our access points to different apps. We have security as it is with our managed service provider, but we have a third party that comes in and checks each desktop, and that I can watch and see who's going where, doing what, how long they're there, and what they were doing while they were working on the app. That's just something I have to do. You probably don't have to go quite that deep, but understanding that is probably a good idea, and having a third-party credentialed security check, cybersecurity check is not a bad idea if you're going totally cloud. And advise your clients. like I said, train them on where they should be logging into and how they should be logging in. Remember earlier, I said some of them are two-way syncs and some of them are one-way syncs. If it's a two-way sync, you need to take that into consideration. If you have data coming in both ways, what's your standard operating procedure? Which data do you deal with first? The data coming in or the data going out? What's your order of operations, right? That's going to be defined not only by the app, but also by the client, and also how you guys choose to work within your own companies. Again, this is another one where we talked about, like in the case of Square, where I could put every sales receipt and every item, if I wanted to, into QBO from Square, or I could do a batch journal entry. I've got CPA firms who have customers who want both, which means that every time the customer updates an item in their POS system that feeds into QBO through Square, they have to then tell the accountant, hey, we need that new item put into QBO, because they don't know how to do that. So, and frankly, the accountant doesn't want the client hanging out in QBO and doing that stuff. They kind of discourage it for good reason. The other thing I ask apps when I'm talking to them is how easy for me to extract my data if I ever wanted to get out of you. If for any reason I decided to go to another app, I don't need this anymore, the company is being sold, how do I extract the data, and how easily is it for me to utilize that data once it's extracted? Very good question to ask. Technical support. I always ask them, so where's your support? Don't tell me it's a damn chat where I'm going to type something into a chat bot and then I'm going to get a message. Somebody from our team will be contacting you in the next 24 hours via email. Well, if I was interested in email, I wouldn't have gotten on chat in the first place. So I don't particularly care for chat bots that don't answer my questions. I'll use them a little bit, but there has to be something behind them. When you get support on an app, it's not necessarily the same person that probably sold you into utilizing the app. So that person is the person, okay, so if I were to use your app, if we use your app, who is it that I can tell my team to go to if we have a problem with your app? Oh, well, you'll never have a problem. Oh, I know, we'll never have a problem. But who do I talk to? Who does my team talk to? Because obviously your job is to go get the next sale. It's not to help us. And where does the buck stop? Who do I get to talk to? Because I'll tell you, it's when you're frustrated, when you're under the gun and you're crunching for time, the last thing you want to see is some robot telling you, I'll get back to you in 24 hours. And what is your policy for tracking your support rep? You need to get good feedback from your team that deals with the support rep. Frankly, I like to have one person in charge of all of the tech. They're the ones who are developing the relationship. My bookkeepers are busy enough. My accountants are busy enough doing the job that they have to do. If something's broken, they give it to somebody whose sole job is to make sure that anything that's broken gets fixed as soon as possible with the least amount of headache. Cost and ROI. Add up the total costs. You've got your little black dress of apps. You know what those are going to be. And then you need to think, does it save time for you? Does it save time for your client? Does it give you actionable information that is going to be of value to your client? If it doesn't give you those three things, if it doesn't give you less than 2.5 minutes to do a full AP cycle on one transaction, don't do it. Don't buy it. Don't get involved. Decide whether the client pays the fees or you pay the fee. You can roll it up if you're doing the flat rate. I roll it up into the total sale and I tell them, I'm giving you this. I'm giving you this app. I'm giving you this app, giving you this app, and I list it. You don't want it? Okay, I'll take it out. Okay, but if you do need it in the future, you're going to have to pay for it. And typically you're going to get some kind of a discount. I should hope that you get some kind of a discount, and then you have to add a little bit more on because you're going to have to be managing the billables and then rebilling your clients. So you have to add a little bit extra on to cover your cost. But still, if you can save the client a little bit. So say you brought a client, okay, we're going to take over your full back office. And your tech stack is going to come up to about maybe $750 a month. That's a lot of money. I could buy QuickBooks off in the box and, not spend that much money and yada, yada, yada. Yeah, well, okay. You could do data entry. You could have crash systems. There's all these other things that are going to take place. But at $750, it's always going to be there whenever we need it, whenever you need it. And then here's the labor time. It's just like if you're building a house, there's labor and then there's cost of goods. So cost of goods. Questions?
Penny, I had several emailed in, and I do see that there's some comments in the Q&A, and I'm not sure if Gary handles that, but I will go ahead and read the ones that were emailed in advance, a few people that could not attend. There is also a question here asking, do we have an SOP template? We furnished our standard SOP on that slide. We can certainly furnish that in a template. What we're hoping to do is after we do this tech stack integration in one QBO file with these tech partners, we were going to hash it out to really get the finest detail in it. But we're happy to furnish the one that we referenced here today, a basic one that should work across all platforms. There's another one wondering when that upcoming class in the CPE will communicate with all of you on that. We're getting the partners together right now, working with great people all across the industry. Will you be doing this for a variety of tech stacks per industry? Sherry is asking. Yes, that is exactly the goal. While you mentioned, okay, this one's for Penny. While after banking, you mentioned, so this one just came in, you mentioned the order of operations do not matter. But if it's a new setup, would it make sense in our SOPs to load the categories in the order the client will use them? For example, they will use AP before AR, etc. And should we standardize in that way?
Great question. And yes. When I say it didn't matter, what matters is you need to have your own standard. That is, so like say you have 4 or 5 bookkeepers. You want them all to be following the same order of operations. You decide. I mean, you decide based on what the client's needs are and what you do in your own firm. You define your order of operations. Connect the bank and credit card, then go all through all of this and go, okay, this is how we're going to do it. Is it a weekly payroll client? Is it a bi-monthly payroll client? That kind of, is it a quarterly because they're an LLC or something? So you just you define it, but don't let it be willy-nilly. So in other words, this is where you have to take some accountability to go to tell the bots what to do and the robots where to go. And
okay.
Does that make any sense?
It makes, yeah, very good sense. You bet. If my client runs into problems, for example, the accountant did the app integration, Penny, do you recommend that they contact you first with issues, or do you tell them to go right for support with the company? And do you include like a support fee for that? So do you recommend you just send them right to the company, or do you try to manage it first? I know you probably do because you're a tech head, but what do you recommend?
No, I'm commitment phobic. No, you go take care of yourself. No, if it's an app that the client brought to me, like a lot of construction companies, they're in Construction Online or BQE, they've already got that going on. I let their internal staff take care of that. But if it's something that I've brought to them, I'm doing the app. Now, the thing is, that's why I want you, when I set up the app and I ask the app people, who do I talk to? And it isn't going to be me. It's actually one of my team members who's dedicated to doing that. You know, even if I'm working with the client and I'm working in the file, I assign that task to the person on my team whose job it is to make sure that and maintain monitor and maintain. Who's the monitor and maintainer, right? They get that job of contacting. And the part of that is they start establishing a relationship with the vendors, and frankly, the vendors get to know you, and you're going to get better results. The other thing is, I know a lot of people don't want to hear, some people might not want to hear this, but if I can keep them out of the GL, my clients out of the GL, and keep them in the app, that's all the better for me.
So Carol just wanted confirmation in regards to creating a checks and balances checklist per client. You recommend we use that as a standard and then customize it for each and every client and keep that in our files.
Yeah,
okay.
And that's based on when you go to a demo or you go to a trade show and the app's there and they're at the booth and they're showing you how their app works on this side and how it integrates to QBO and how sweet all that is. They're showing you perfect data in a perfect world with a perfect client. I don't know about you, but I ain't perfect, and neither are any of my clients. So like, for instance, I might have a client. In fact, we've run into this. We go, okay, this client, they're using an expense tracker. And we have two clients using the same expense tracker. One client has just 2 people in his company, and they're pretty good about getting their expenses, their receipts uploaded on a regular basis. The other client has 6 or 7 people. They're not all really good, and the bank feed is feeding the information in before the expense tracker is giving me the expense with the documentation. Now, if I were to ignore the fact that I have duplicate data coming in, I could make duplicate entries in my QuickBooks because the bank feed I've already allocated. Now I've added that expense onto it. Have I seen that? Absolutely, I've seen it. So what do? I define the standard operating procedure for that client to be different.
Okay.
We take the publishing, you know, that kind of thing.
Okay, girl, getting through these questions here. Now this is a good one. The process of integrating tech stacks can be time consuming by the time you sign up for the app and integrate each one. Is it better to recommend integration of entire tech stack up front with the client, or create a schedule where you load one at a time? How do you go about the time management of that? Like some of our accountants, which are absolutely wise to do this, they have their core tech stack, Penny, and they want their clients to use them, their core tech stack as well, and they do. But when you're integrating that with a client, and it's a big project when you think about doing them all, what's the time management there? What do? Do you just set aside an afternoon or whatever and do the whole thing at once, or?
Well, that's when I let my technical person take care of that, my app integrator. They handle that. And a lot of times, to tell you the truth, I get it where you'd like to do it all at once, but especially if it's a new client you've never worked on before, you still don't know what you don't know. And to throw an app in there without really running it, and it's, you know, maybe it's 1 to 3 months before you finally get it all done. But you have to put that review time in there. You're right about that. We schedule that in our pricing, checklist is like, we add it in if on the flat rate pricing, allocating so much time for everybody to sit down once a week to talk about this client. And it might be 5 minutes because we're handling maybe 10 clients in that meeting, but we're adding all of that time into the flat monthly rate because we're going to be talking about that client for as long as we have that client. And apps will change, data will change, and the size of the client will probably change.
Gary needs to post another poll question so they can get CPE. And if you'll advance the slide, I've got our contact information on the next slide. And Penny, you did a great job today. Thank you so much for doing this with me and helping me craft this session.
So the poll question is, do you currently manage app integrations with your QBO clients? Yes, no, the client does that. No, we never touch third-party apps. Just give a few more seconds here. I think most people have participated, and this will be the third and final poll question. So make sure you do answer it if you do need CPE. We'll close this out in about 3 more seconds. 3, 2, and 1. We had basically 72% yes, 21% said no, and 7% said we never touch third-party apps. That does bring us to about the end of our session here. Penny, did you have any last parting thoughts that you wanted to share? I mean, you've shared a lot. It was fantastic. Thank you so much.
You know, just this is the future. Shoot, we've integrated ChatGPT to this stuff. Should see the stuff we're doing with that. So buckle up, people. It's going to be a fun ride. Yeah, and then there are a couple more things just before we close out. Murph wanted to remind everyone that if you are participating in our Top 100 Pro Advisor program for 2024, not the one that we're wrapping up voting on this week, but for 2024, these sessions for Future Forward will be a part of that. So make sure you kind of make a note of that so that when you see that on the application next year, you will see these sessions. So just make sure you make a note that you did participate so you can get some score some points there. I think that will be it. Kim, do you have anything else that you wanted to share in closing?
I don't. I really appreciate your inviting us to do this, Gary. It's been really a pleasure working with you and Bob. I do see there's several comments on there, people wanting the slideshow. Yes, that will be available to you. We're getting that to Gary right now. And anyway, we just appreciate being part of this, and thank you so much.
Very good. All right. Well, we will be wrapping this up. I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon. We do have one more session in today's Future Forward, and that does kick off at 3:30, and then we kick off again tomorrow morning at 11. So if you haven't registered, you still can for any of the sessions that are remaining. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you.